Welcome to Whispers Beyond, where horror, philosophy, and the unknown intertwine. New full-length stories. Every Friday, your requested nightmares. Every Wednesday, bite-sized horrors. Every Monday. And in the spaces between, whispers of poetry and philosophy. Glimpses into the abyss. Like, subscribe, and listen closely.
Silence breaks. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of everything. There are things you only hear in the quiet, not just ambient noise, the settling of wood in the walls, the soft crackle of your own breath, the faint rhythm of a neighbor's footsteps upstairs, but something deeper. The shape of a thought before it's spoken, the way someone exhales when they think no one's listening. In that stillness, something else begins to surface. Not chaos, as most fear, but clarity. Language gets in the way. It bends intent, dulls feeling, dresses raw emotion in costume. But a voice, untouched, isolated, looped just right, can become something more. A perfect version of the self. Fixed, unchanging, something worth keeping. Because once a sound is captured, once it's stripped of its imperfections, it doesn't belong to the one who made it anymore. It belongs to the one who heard it.
Theo's garage always smelled like sawdust and hot electronics. Even in winter, when the air outside felt like frozen metal, the inside buzzed with warm, low-grade chaos. Cords tangled in loops on the concrete floor, half-empty coffee cups on amplifiers, a few old band posters curling off the walls. It wasn't much, but it had character. It sounded good, and that's what mattered. Elias sat on the faded plaid couch near the back, laptop balanced on one knee, fingers hovering over the keys. He wasn't in the mood to produce tonight, just to listen. Let the others move air while he sat in it. Theo was tuning his guitar, eyebrows furrowed like he was trying to solve a puzzle only he could see. The worn-out strap slid a little when he leaned into a chord, and he swore under his breath. Nico sat cross-legged on the rug, tapping a new rhythm out with a pair of sticks on his thighs, grinning to himself like he'd just heard something no one else had caught yet. "You guys want to lay something down or just talk about it all night?" Theo muttered, twisting a knob on his pedal board. "We're waiting on you, Rockstar," Nico said, giving the sticks a final tap before dropping them beside him. Theo rolled his eyes, but smiled. Elias leaned back against the wall, letting the low hum of the monitors seep into his spine. This was their ritual. Late nights, low stakes. No pressure, just sound. Mira dropped by around 9. She always texted first, never stayed long. She wasn't part of the band, not really, but she liked the vibe, liked Theo. She carried a padded gear bag slung over one shoulder and wore her usual thrift store layering. Oversized jacket, faded jeans, boots scuffed to hell. "Figured you guys might want this," she said, setting the bag near the couch. "Old stuff. Mics, cables, maybe a preamp. My ex's. I've been meaning to get rid of it." Theo perked up, always interested in free gear. "You sure? Could be good stuff." "I'm sure," she said. "I don't want it in my apartment." Her voice had that careful lightness again, the way she talked when she was skimming over something darker beneath. Elias caught it, but didn't say anything. She never offered more than she wanted to. "You want to hang out?" Nico asked, tossing her a water bottle. She caught it, cracked the seal, and shrugged. "For a minute, then I've got a shift." Theo sat on the edge of an amp, half pretending to check his tuning again. "Still working at that cafe?" "Until I die," Mira said. She took a sip. "You guys recording anything interesting?" "Trying to," Nico said. Theo's stuck in the land of overthinking. It's called refining, Theo shot back. Elias smiled. Mira looked around, taking in the wires and clutter and heat of it all. This place hasn't changed a bit. Neither have we, Elias said. She laughed softly at that. Good, don't. As she turned to leave, she hesitated for a second. Then, he used to make music too, you know. My ex Dot. Theo stiffened slightly. Elias saw it. Mira didn't look at either of them. Got real into loops, she continued. Built a whole soundscape once just using door hinges and wind chimes. It was cool until it started being about me. Everything was. Then she was gone, with a quick wave and the door clicking shut behind her. Silence settled heavier than before. Nico cleared his throat. She's got stories. Theo nodded, still staring at the door. Yeah, she does. Elias opened a new session on his laptop, but didn't hit record. The room didn't feel like making music anymore. It felt like something had just been left behind. The next time they met up, it was raining. Not the good kind of rain, soft and rhythmic, something to fall asleep to. This was the anxious kind, hammering against the garage roof like it wanted in. It made the old fluorescent light above Elias's head flicker faintly, and for some reason, that felt like a warning. Nico showed up late, his hoodie soaked through, curls dripping. He gave a nod to Theo, who was already fiddling with a delay pedal, and tossed his backpack near the door. Sorry, had to stop by this guy's place, Nico said, shaking water off his hands. He's got this old cassette deck he's letting me borrow. Theo didn't look up. Guy from work? Nah, someone from the local scene, found him on the forums. Real low-key dude, does ambient stuff. Of course he does, Theo muttered. Nico grinned and flopped into the cracked leather chair across from Elias. He's cool though, kind of awkward, but whatever. He wants to come hang sometime, maybe plug in, mess around. I told him I'd check. Elias raised a brow. You trust someone off a forum with your location? I didn't give him this address, Nico said, grabbing a towel from the stack near the amp. Yet. Theo finally looked up, guitar still in his lap. What's his name? Nico shrugged. Rowan. Didn't get a last name. Something about the name itched at Elias's brain. Not in recognition exactly, but in tone. Like a word you think you've heard in a dream. Theo gave a vague nod, clearly unimpressed. You vouch for him. I barely know him, Nico said, but he's chill. Yeah, well, let's keep it to just us for tonight. Elias glanced at the gear bag Mira had left, still untouched, sitting in the corner like an abandoned pet. A single XLR cable had slipped out the zipper, coiled on the floor like it was trying to escape. Nico followed his gaze. That from Mira? Yeah, Elias said. Her ex's stuff. Any good? We haven't opened it. Theo cut in. I figured I'd wait. Bad energy. Nico chuckled, but Elias understood. There was something about inherited tools, like they held memory, especially in this space. Every mic had heard confessions. Every cable had carried someone's heartbeat in the form of noise. Theo started picking out a new riff. Slow, mournful, not his usual style. Elias let it loop, nodding slightly, but his thoughts drifted. Rowan. The name lingered. The rain kept tapping, and the fluorescent light buzzed again. Just a glitch, probably, nothing. But Elias couldn't shake the feeling that something had just entered the room, even if it wasn't here yet. Rowan arrived the following week. It was a quiet night. No rain, no wind, just the kind of stillness that makes every footstep sound louder than it should. Elias was the first to get there. He set up his laptop and a couple of MIDI controllers, checking levels, letting the garage warm up with hums and low tones. Theo showed up next, already mid-complaint about work, then Nico not long after. He wasn't alone. "This is Rowan," Nico said, stepping aside to let him in. Rowan gave a small nod, his hands buried deep in the pockets of a dark grey coat. He had shoulder-length hair, damp at the ends, and skin that looked like it hadn't seen much sunlight. His eyes, pale, sharp, unsettled, scanned the room like he was taking mental inventory. Not curious, just calculating. "Hey," Elias offered, extending a hand. Rowan took it loosely. "Nice to meet you." Theo barely looked up from his tuning. "You play?" "Some," Rowan said. "Mostly ambient. Texture work, found sound. I do a lot of processing." Nico gestured toward the empty corner near the rack mount. "You can set up there if you brought anything." Rowan pulled a small device out of his coat, an old-school field recorder, black and matte, worn at the edges. He held it like it was something delicate. "I've got some samples if you want to layer something weird." "Always down for weird," Elias said, though he wasn't sure he meant it this time. Rowan plugged into the interface without asking. The waveform that filled the monitors was soft at first. Wind chimes slowed to a crawl. The creak of floorboards stretched into drone. It wasn't bad. In fact, it was beautiful, uneasy. It filled the garage like fog. Theo paused mid-strum. "That's something." Rowan turned his head slightly. "It's the sound of an attic door closing, from inside." Elias blinked. Nico gave a small laugh. "All right, that's definitely weird." "I like layers," Rowan murmured. "Things hidden underneath other things." The line didn't seem intended as creepy, but Elias felt it anyway. A ripple under the surface of the room. Theo shot him a glance, and Elias gave the smallest nod. They'd both felt it. Nico tried to keep the vibe going. "We've got some old gear mirror dropped off. Might be cool to run some of that through your stuff. We haven't cracked it open yet." Rowan looked over at the canvas bag in the corner. For a moment, he just stared. Then, "Huh," he said. "Looks like something I used to have." He crouched beside it, brushed a finger over the fraying zipper. "Mic bag?" he asked. "Yeah," Theo said carefully. Rowan nodded. "I had one just like it." Then he stood and didn't say anything else, but the air had changed again, subtly, unmistakably. Elias opened a new session and didn't record, just listened. And as Rowan fed more warped samples into the mix, dripping faucets, a woman's breath slowed to a sigh, static stretched like skin, Elias began to feel like they weren't making music. They were building something. And they didn't know what it was yet. The next few sessions blurred into each other. Rowan kept showing up, not every time, but often enough that his presence stopped feeling new. He never texted ahead. He just arrived, silent and precise, always carrying that little recorder, always contributing something that made the room feel colder. Everyone adjusted in their own way. Theo got quieter when Rowan was around. Nico acted like nothing was off, though his smiles didn't reach his eyes anymore. And Elias just watched. Noticed. It was small things at first. Rowan started dressing more like Nico. Hoodies, denim jacket, even the same brand of worn-out sneakers. Not an exact copy, just close enough to feel like Echo. One night, he brought a beat he'd been working on. "Just a sketch," he said. But when he played it, Elias felt his stomach turn. It sounded like one of Nico's tracks from weeks earlier, slower, darker, but unmistakably derived from it. Nico said nothing, just nodded and complimented the mix. Elias wanted to say something, but the moment passed before he could. That night, after Rowan left, Elias lingered in the garage with Theo. The others were gone, and Theo was packing up his pedals in a tight, quiet rhythm. He gives me the creeps, Theo muttered. Elias looked up. Rowan? Yeah, I don't care how good his loops are, he watches people too closely. Doesn't blink enough. Elias tried to laugh. That's a new metric. I'm serious. Theo zipped the case shut with more force than necessary. He's not just intense, he's rehearsed, like he's studying us. Elias thought about Rowan's eyes, how they never seemed to soften, even when he smiled. How he watched June that first night she sang with them, like he wasn't listening to her voice, but reading her intention. He didn't say that. Instead, he said, he's probably just awkward. Theo scoffed. Yeah, well, awkward doesn't usually feel dangerous. Elias looked at the gear bag still in the corner. No one had touched it since Rowan's comment. He said it looked like something he used to have, Elias said softly. Theo followed his gaze. Maybe it was. The rain started again, tapping softly on the garage roof. Theo slung his bag over his shoulder. Just watch him, all right? Something's off. Elias nodded, but he was already thinking back, trying to remember if he'd ever heard Mira say her ex's name. She talked around it, not through it. Just stories, fragments. She never said Rowan, and yet the unease inside Elias deepened like a low-end frequency only he could hear. June's voice had a kind of weightless sadness to it, like every note had been floating just above her chest before she decided to let it go. Elias didn't know her well, but she'd been around a few times now, usually at Nico's invitation. She was soft-spoken, quick to laugh, but there was something grounded about her too. A quiet self-assurance that stood in contrast to Rowan's coiled presence. Tonight, they were all set up for a loose jam. Theo noodled through chords. Nico tapped out a brushed rhythm on his pad controller, and June sat on a stool with a mic in hand, humming into the mix. The vibe was warm, familiar, until Rowan arrived. He didn't say anything when he walked in, just nodded and slipped into the space like smoke. He lingered near the back wall, arms crossed, head tilted slightly, listening, watching. Elias noticed how June's shoulders tensed when she saw him. Not overtly, but the way her hand gripped the mic stand changed, knuckles whitening for a second. She smiled anyway. Hey. Didn't mean to interrupt, Rowan said. Just wanted to hear the session. His voice was low, calm, almost kind, but it carried something under it, like a hum beneath silence. June gave a polite nod, then turned back toward the mic. Elias glanced at Nico, who offered a tight-lipped shrug. He looked tired. They went back to it. Theo looped a progression, and Elias laid a soft pad underneath. June began to sing, low at first, almost a whisper. Elias adjusted the gain slightly. As she hit the second chorus, Elias caught Rowan mouthing the words. Not all of them, just fragments. Lines June had written barely a week ago. Ones they hadn't even recorded yet. Elias froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard. June noticed too. She trailed off mid-line and cleared her throat. Sorry, she said. Lost it. Theo glanced back. All good. Rowan didn't react, just stood there, expression blank. Later, after June left, Elias lingered outside while Nico had a cigarette. The night was cool and still, mist rising from the street like breath. She okay? Elias asked. Nico exhaled slowly. I think so. I don't know. Rowan gives her a weird vibe. She say that? Not in words. Nico took another drag. She's too polite, but you can tell. Elias nodded. The mist was curling around the street lamp across the road, wrapping light in something soft and ghostly. Did he ever mention her before she came around? Elias asked. No, Nico said. But once she showed up, he got weirdly interested. Like he started asking about her music, her voice, where she learned to sing like that. Elias felt the low hum in his chest again, the one that felt like a song out of key. He said he likes layers, Elias muttered. What? Nothing. They stood there in silence for a while, both watching the mist rise. And somewhere behind them, barely audible from the closed garage, Elias could hear Rowan looping a piece of June's vocals from earlier, cutting it, stretching it, turning her voice into something that didn't sound like her at all. The next time they met, Rowan was already there. He sat cross-legged on the rug, eyes closed, headphones on, quietly looping static and breath into a track no one else had heard. A faint metronome clicked through his gear, marking time with unnatural precision. Elias noticed the tension in Theo's jaw as he walked past, setting down his gear a little harder than usual. Nico entered last, trailed by June. She gave a polite smile to the room, but didn't move past the doorway. Her eyes locked briefly on Rowan, who hadn't acknowledged anyone yet. "I'll just watch tonight," she said, stepping back outside before anyone could argue. Nico hesitated, then followed her. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving Theo, Elias and Rowan in a silence far too thick for the early evening. Theo plugged in without a word, began strumming something low and dissonant. No rhythm, just mood. Elias didn't bother booting up the DAW. He watched Rowan instead. Eventually, Rowan lifted one headphone ear and said, "She's got a voice that carries sadness in the right way." Theo stopped playing. "What?" he asked, voice flat. "June," Rowan said. "Some people try to sound broken. She actually is. It's authentic." Theo stared. Elias felt a chill crawl into the room and settle just beneath the skin of everything. "You talked to her?" Theo asked. Rowan smiled. "We've had moments." Theo scoffed and leaned back against the amp. "Yeah, well, maybe don't romanticize people you barely know." Rowan turned toward him slowly. "I don't romanticize. I observe." Elias stood between them, physically, emotionally, and tried to diffuse it. "We recording anything tonight or just posturing?" Rowan didn't take his eyes off Theo. "Just talking." "Cool," Theo said, pushing off the amp. "I'm out." He walked past Elias and out the door, muttering something under his breath. Elias listened for the car ignition, but didn't hear it. Rowan didn't move. "Sometimes," he said softly, "people can't tell the difference between being watched and being seen." Elias kept his expression neutral. "That's supposed to mean something." Rowan smiled without warmth. "Just a thought." He went back to his headphones, unbothered. Elias unplugged his interface and packed in silence. The hum of the equipment had gone still, and the room felt hollow. Before he left, he glanced once more at the gear bag Mira had dropped off. Still untouched, still resting in the shadows. Rowan had brushed past it earlier on his way in. Elias remembered him glancing down, eyes narrowing just a little, like recognition half-formed. He said nothing, but Elias could feel something shifting beneath the surface, like pressure building inside a song not meant to be played. It was late when Elias got the message from June, just a single line sent through a private DM. Has Rowan ever done this before? No context, no explanation. The kind of message that brings the weight of something left unsaid. Elias stared at it for a long moment, fingers hovering over the keys. He didn't respond right away. He didn't know what this meant. Instead, he scrolled back through his feed, pulling up her profile. Sparse. No public posts. A few tagged photos from local shows. A grainy snapshot of her and Nico in a corner booth somewhere, both smiling mid-laugh. And beneath that, one of Rowan's posts. A track upload, recently published, title Hollow Harmony for Jay. Elias clicked. The track was familiar before the first note. Not in melody, but in tone. Like déjà vu shaped into sound. June's voice, warped, distant, layered under heavy reverb, as if submerged beneath water and glass. It wasn't just sampling, it was manipulation. A line she'd sung during the last session, taken, bent, folded into something unrecognizable and deeply invasive. The lyrics were new though. Elias listened closely. I see you best when your eyes are closed. I hear you better when your mouth isn't yours. You are never more than a vessel. He paused the track. The silence that followed was thicker than sound. Elias finally replied to June. Number what happened? She responded almost immediately. He left a note on my bike, said he wanted to collaborate, that he already had pieces of me. Elias stood, heart pounding in a slow, deep rhythm. He wanted to say it wasn't like Rowan, but he knew that wasn't true. He called Theo. It rang once, then again. No answer. On the third try, Theo finally picked up, voice low and tired. What's up? He's using her voice, Elias said. From the sessions, he uploaded a track. A pause. Then, Jesus Christ. And June said he left a note. Theo swore under his breath. We need to tell Nico. He won't want to hear it. Tough. He's in this. We all are. Elias sat back down, staring at the waveform frozen on his laptop screen. He remembered what Rowan said that night. I don't romanticize. I observe. But this wasn't observation. This was ownership. And beneath it all, Elias began to feel the shape of something larger forming. Something that had started long before June. He just didn't know how far back it went. Nico didn't want to hear it. Elias met him the next morning outside the cafe where June worked weekends. The sidewalk was already warming in the sun, but Nico kept his hoodie up, eyes shaded beneath the brim of a faded baseball cap. He looked tired, not hungover, just worn, like someone carrying weight they hadn't yet admitted to. Elias laid it out gently as he could. The track, the vocal sample, the message June got, the pattern that was starting to take shape. Nico's reaction wasn't denial, exactly, just resistant. Maybe he didn't mean it like that, Nico said, arms crossed, jaw tight. You know how artists are. People use found sound all the time. If she didn't want it out there. She didn't give permission, Elias cut in. You were there. None of us knew he was recording. Nico looked away. You don't even like him. You've been looking for a reason to... This isn't about liking him, Elias said. It's about the fact that Mira used to talk about an ex who did this same kind of shit. Nico blinked. Wait, what? Elias hesitated. I'm not saying it's definitely him, Elias said. But Mira's told me and Theo things about the way her ex would write songs about her, use her voice without consent, layer it into ambient tracks like she was just a sound effect. He called it art. She called it control. Nico's face paled slightly. Rowan, he said something once about a girl who never gave him closure, that she ghosted him after he put everything into the work. Elias nodded slowly. That sounds familiar. For a moment, Nico just stood there, watching traffic pass like it had the answer. Then, shit! Elias waited. He got weird the other night, Nico finally said. Said I was rewriting his rhythm. I thought it was some metaphorical bullshit, but he looked angry, like really angry, like I stole something. You didn't. I know, but I think maybe in his head I did. They stood in silence, the city sounds muted around them. Inside the cafe, June moved behind the counter like nothing had happened, wiping down a table, ponytail swaying gently with each step. She glanced up once and caught Nico's eye through the window. He didn't smile. "I think we should talk to Theo," Elias said. Nico nodded. "And Mira. She doesn't even know he's this close." "That," Nico said, "might be the worst part." Elias looked down at his phone. The screen was still open to the waveform of Rowan's track. He hit play again, just to be sure. June's voice floated through the headphones, haunting and hollow. "I see you best when your eyes are closed." He paused it again. No reverb could hide what it really was. A warning, a confession, and maybe something worse. The garage felt colder than usual that night. Theo had left the door cracked, letting in just enough wind to make the mic stand shiver. Elias arrived first, and they didn't speak at first, just moved in the quiet rhythm of setting up, untangling cables, plugging things in that neither of them intended to use. When Nico arrived, his expression was drawn tight, like someone forcing themselves to do something they hadn't fully accepted. They waited. Rowan didn't show. Theo eventually broke the silence. "You talked to Mira yet?" Elias nodded. "Met her for coffee earlier. Didn't say much, just asked about that ex again. She didn't know his name, remember? But when I asked if he ever used music to manipulate people, she didn't even blink. Said he once played a song at a show with a sample of her crying layered under the outro." Theo let out a low whistle, leaning back against the wall. "She say how long ago that was?" "Couple years." Theo rubbed the back of his neck. "Jesus, and now he's back. What are the odds?" Elias didn't answer, because it didn't feel like odds anymore. It felt like intent. Nico sat on the couch, hands clasped tight between his knees. "You think he's been following her this whole time?" "I don't know," Elias said. "But I don't think any of this is coincidence." The door creaked behind them. Rowan stepped inside like he'd never been gone. No explanation, no apology. He wore the same dark coat, same steady eyes. In one hand, he carried a small flash drive. "I made something," he said, like it was just another night. Theo straightened. "We're not in the mood, man." Rowan ignored him, plugged the drive into the interface. The monitors clicked as the file loaded. Elias didn't move, didn't stop him. The waveform appeared. He hit play. At first it was noise, glitchy textures, rising hums, reversed piano. Then came the voice. Not June, Mira, unmistakable. Breathing, broken words. The sound of someone trying not to cry. Sliced and looped, over and over, buried in static. Then a second voice layered beneath it, Rowan's own, whispering something just below the threshold of language. "You left a hole in me. I filled it with you. Now we're the same." Theo stepped forward, fists clenched. "Turn it off." Rowan did, slowly, like it was his choice. No one spoke for a moment. Elias could hear his own pulse. "You've been recording us," Nico said. "All of us." Rowan tilted his head. "I listen, that's all." "That wasn't listening," Elias said. "That was..." "Preservation," Rowan interrupted. "People lie when they speak, but their sounds, they tell the truth." Theo took another step forward. "You need to get the fuck out." Rowan looked at each of them in turn, unbothered. Then his gaze landed on Elias. "You think this started with her," he said. "But it didn't. She was just the first to make me quiet." He pulled the drive from the interface and walked toward the door. "I'll be in touch," he said. "There's still a track left to finish." Then he was gone. No one moved for a long time. Theo eventually unplugged his guitar. Nico rubbed his face like trying to erase the past hour. Elias sat in front of the monitors, staring at the empty DAW session. And in the silence that followed, he swore he could still hear Mira's voice, looping, begging, buried beneath the noise. Elias couldn't sleep. He sat at his desk well past midnight, the glow of the monitor painting his face in pale light. The world outside his window was still, indistinct. Shadows where houses should be, movement where there shouldn't be any. He kept the track open on screen, the one Rowan played before leaving. His finger hovered over the spacebar. He didn't want to hear it again, but he needed to. The waveform rolled forward. It started as before, ambient loops, Mira's breath slowed to a ghost rhythm. But now Elias noticed something else buried in the lower frequencies. A faint distortion, barely audible. He pulled up the EQ, dialed down the high end, boosted the mids. A voice, Rowan's, speaking quietly, layered so deep it had almost disappeared. I learned to become silent so no one could leave me again. They can't leave what they can't hear. Elias stopped the track and leaned back, breath shallow. His phone buzzed. Theo, check your email. Just got this from Mira. Elias clicked over. One unread message. No subject, no greeting. Just a single forwarded thread. An old email Mira had dug up from years ago. It was a message from her ex, a file attachment, a track title. For M, you'll hear me eventually. Elias clicked it. It opened in the same software they use now. The waveform was different, but the structure was the same. Long droning intros, warped loops, breath stretched into rhythm, and then a voice, not Mira's, but someone else. The same layered trick, same manipulations, different girl, different name. And just like that, it hit him. This wasn't new. Rowan had been doing this for years. Different voices, different women, each buried into his music like samples from a fading past. Not preserved, not honored, claimed. Elias pulled up their current project folder and opened a recent bounce Rowan had insisted on exporting himself. There, tucked deep in the reverb channel, he found a vocal stem mislabeled as AMB1.wave. He isolated it. It was June's voice, unfiltered, a single line. Please stop. Not sung, not performed, spoken, Elias closed the session and unplugged his monitors. The silence that followed wasn't comforting. It was heavy, like being buried alive in a soundproof room. He picked up his phone and texted Nico. We need to get June out, tonight. Then he added, he's not finished with her. The night air hit Elias like a slap, sharp, bracing, full of the kind of urgency that made everything look different. Colors harsher, shadows deeper. Nico pulled up in front of Elias's apartment before he even had his jacket zipped. The passenger door popped open with a hollow thunk. No music played on the ride, just the low hum of the engine and the uneven rhythm of Nico's breathing. I texted her, Nico said, eyes locked on the road. She's not answering. Elias stared out the window, watching the city blur past in streaks of sodium light. She's probably asleep. Or, Nico didn't finish the sentence. Neither of them had to. They reached June's building in under 15 minutes. It was a converted duplex on the edge of town, tucked behind a church and half buried in ivy. One porch light buzzed overhead. The rest of the windows were dark. Nico rang the buzzer. No answer. Elias tried calling. Voicemail. He looked at Nico, whose expression was starting to collapse into something panicked. We can't just break in, Nico said, but it sounded like a plea, not a rule. Elias tried the knob. It opened. Nico froze. Did she leave it unlocked? I don't think so. The hallway smelled like old pine cleaner and damp carpet. They climbed the stairs to her unit, the second floor creaking beneath their feet. Elias knocked once, soft, then again harder. Still no answer. He pressed his ear to the door, no movement, no sound, just something. A faint hum. Nico pulled out his phone, tried calling again. Elias watched the door. Just before it went to voicemail, he heard it. June's ringtone coming from inside the apartment. He knocked again. June? Nothing. He looked at Nico. Nico nodded. They opened the door. The apartment was dim, lit only by the blue wash of her laptop screen on the kitchen counter. The place was intact. No signs of struggle, no mess. But it was wrong. Still, in the way abandoned places are. Then Elias saw the headphones on the table. Still warm, one earpad slightly damp with sweat. And beside them, a note. You'll understand when you hear it all. Elias grabbed the laptop, pulled up the last session. A door window was still open. Track titled Inheritance for Jay in full. Multiple stems, vocals, field recordings, a subtrack labeled Looped Truth. And beneath it all, one final audio file, Mirror extract.wave. Elias clicked play, only for a second. It was Mira's voice, but not her words. It was a phrase Mira had said to Elias, weeks ago, offhandedly over coffee. I just don't want to be remembered like that. Rowan had captured it, maybe through her phone, maybe through one of the old mics in that gear bag she'd left behind. Elias stopped the track and backed away, stomach turning. He's not obsessed with June, he whispered. She's just the next piece. Nico's face went pale. Where the fuck is she? They turned. The bathroom light was on under the closed door. Elias stepped forward, heart pounding. He knocked. June? No answer. He pushed the door open slowly. The bathroom was empty. The window above the tub was cracked. Barely enough space for someone to fit through. But on the windowsill, deliberately left, clean, unmistakable, was Rowan's recorder. Still running, still capturing, still listening. They searched the neighborhood for over an hour. Backyards, side streets, behind the church, every alley and corner June could have disappeared into. Nico shouted her name until his voice started to break, but the silence that followed each call was complete. Not even dogs barking, not even wind. It was like she'd vanished between frames. By the time they returned to the apartment, Elias's shoes were soaked and Nico's hands were shaking. Neither of them said what they were thinking, that Rowan had her, that he had planned this, that they were already too late. Elias stared at the recorder on the windowsill. The red light still blinked steadily, as if mocking them. He picked it up and turned it off. Why leave it? Nico asked. Elias didn't answer at first. He pulled the device close to his ear and rewound it a few minutes. He hit play. A faint voice emerged, June's, breathing fast, saying something under her breath. I don't want to go. Please don't, And then a whisper layered underneath it, Rowan's voice. You're already gone. Elias snapped it off and set it down like it burned. He wanted us to hear that, he said. This whole thing. He's not just collecting, he's performing. Nico sat heavily on the couch, burying his head in his hands. We need to call someone. Who? Elias asked. The cops. And say what? That a guy we can't prove knows Mira or June used some vocal samples without permission? Nico didn't answer. They both knew how it would play out. No proof, no break-in, no body, just sound. Elias stood and moved back to the laptop. He copied the entire DAW project to a flash drive, along with the folder that contained Rowan's most recent mixes. Track after track, each labeled with cryptic initials. Some they recognized, some they didn't. Some that suggested this had been going on far longer than any of them thought. A few dated back years. "I'm going to Mira's," Elias said. "She needs to know everything." Nico nodded slowly. "And me." "You wait, just in case she comes back." "If she comes back," Nico murmured. Elias didn't respond. He pocketed the drive and stepped into the hall. The door clicked softly behind him. As he made his way down the stairs, he thought about the old gear bag Mira had left in Theo's garage. About the night Rowan saw it and said it looked familiar. "I had one just like it." But what if it wasn't just like it? What if it was his? What if she'd been trying to get rid of him all along, piece by piece? And what if he'd simply left parts of himself behind to be found again? Elias pulled his hood up and stepped into the night, feeling the weight of the flash drive in his pocket like it was something alive. Rowan didn't need to be seen. He didn't need to be remembered. He just needed to be heard. Mira lived in a third-floor walk-up above a florist shop, the kind of place where the walls were thin and the windows always looked like they were frowning. The hallway smelled like dust and old flowers. Elias knocked 3 times before she answered. She wore a hoodie 2 sizes too big and no makeup. Her hair was tied back in a messy knot. For a moment she didn't say anything, just looked at him like she already knew. "You heard something," she said. Elias nodded. "We need to talk." She let him in without asking what it was. The apartment was small, quiet, warm. A candle burned on the coffee table, lavender. A calming scent, as if she'd been trying to make the space feel safe, even if she didn't believe it. Elias sat on the couch and handed her the flash drive. "That's his," he said. "Or it's what he made. Recordings, songs, stems, stuff he pulled from our sessions, from June." Mira didn't reach for it. She sat across from him, hands folded, eyes fixed on his face. "How bad?" she asked. Elias swallowed. He had her voice layered into tracks, lyrics that mimic things she said. "There's even a file named after you. Stuff you told me, stuff I didn't even realize he could have heard." He left a recorder running in her place. "She's gone, Mira." Mira closed her eyes. For a long time she didn't speak. Then, he used to record things without asking. Conversations, voicemails. He said he liked to capture real moments, that when people knew they were being heard, they changed, performed. She opened her eyes again. "I stopped talking around him altogether, near the end." Elias leaned forward. "Why didn't you tell us his name?" "Because I wasn't sure it was him," she said. "It's been years. And even if it was, I thought maybe he'd moved on. Maybe he'd finally let it go." Elias shook his head. He hasn't. Mira reached for the flash drive with slow fingers and held it like something delicate. "How long have you known?" "Not long," Elias admitted. "But I think it's been him from the start. I think Nico brought him in by accident, and Rowan saw a way back in. To you, to all of us." "He never wanted me," Mira said, her voice flat. "He wanted to turn me into sound, something that couldn't leave." Elias didn't speak. Mira stood, walked over to her record shelf, and pulled down an old photo. She handed it to him. It was her, sitting at a park bench, holding a portable mic in one hand, smiling. Rowan stood a few feet behind her in the background, out of focus, almost unnoticeable if you weren't looking for him. "He wasn't supposed to be there," she said. "I didn't even know he took this until after I broke it off, found it buried in an old drive." Elias looked at the photo for a long time, then handed it back. "He's following a script," he said. "This isn't about you anymore, or June. It's about the next sound, the next echo. Mira nodded. Then we make noise he can't control. Elias blinked. What does that mean? She looked back at him, something sharp in her eyes now. Not fear, something else. Let's finish the track, she said. Together. Elias stared. She went on. We take what he made. We manipulate him. His voice, his loops. We cut him into pieces and feed him back to himself. Every trick he used, every method flipped. Elias felt the idea catch fire in his chest. You think he'll hear it? Mira nodded. He has to. They met in Theo's garage the next night. It was late, later than usual, and the air outside felt charged, like the hours before a storm. Mira arrived first, flash drive in hand, hoodie pulled tight around her face. Elias let her in, locking the door behind them even though it felt paranoid. Theo was already there, pacing, visibly restless. When he saw Mira, he stopped. You sure about this? He asked. Mira nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. Elias set up the laptop at the workstation, loading the files. The door lit up with a twisted landscape of waveforms, Rowan's compositions, layer after layer of captured voices, some familiar, others nameless. Tracks with cryptic names like Soft Ruin, Breathless Loop, M Resonance Final. Elias clicked into one of the raw vocal samples. Rowan's voice, quiet, calm, threaded with something rotten. They always leave, but the echoes never do. Theo clenched his jaw. How do we fight someone like this? He's a ghost with a studio. We don't fight, Mira said. We overwrite. She stepped forward, took a mic from the rack, and adjusted it without hesitation. She sat on the old stool by the wall, pulled her hood down, and looked directly into the interface's empty track list. Let's record. The first take was simple, her voice dry and steady. You only know how to steal. You call it art. But it's theft, it's cowardice, and I'm done being your echo. Elias ran it through a grain delay, looped it, crushed the ends with distortion. Mira didn't flinch. They built the track over the next 2 hours, taking Rowan's samples and twisting them into something unrecognizable. Mira's voice led the charge, slicing through his carefully arranged layers like broken glass. Theo added harsh metallic chords, ugly, discordant. Elias buried reversed clips of Rowan's own whispers under filters so heavy they sounded like animal cries. They titled the track Dissonant Restraint. It didn't sound like music, it sounded like reclamation. When they played it back, no one spoke. It filled the room like a scream underwater, a collapse captured and looped into defiance. Mira stared at the monitors with cold, dry eyes. Send it, she said. Elias exported it as a private link and sent it to every email, handle, and alias Rowan had ever used that they could find in the metadata. 32 in total. No message, no subject line, just the sound. The garage fell silent again. The speakers buzzed low. They waited. Then Theo's phone lit up. Unknown number. You think noise makes you safe? You think I haven't heard this before? You think you can erase me with static? Then another message. This time it was a voice memo. Elias tapped it. Rowan's voice, calm, collected, somehow already inside the new track they'd built. Thank you for the collaboration. The message ended with 3 soft knocks. Mira went pale. Elias looked up. Those knocks hadn't come from the phone. They had come from the other side of the garage door. The knocks came again. 3, measured, polite. Then silence. Elias, Theo, and Mira stared at the door. No one moved. The garage's overhead light buzzed, casting hard shadows across the cluttered walls. The air was too still, like the room itself was waiting for something to happen. Theo stepped forward first, jaw clenched. "Don't," Elias said, voice low. Theo didn't stop. He reached for the door handle like someone who's been holding his breath too long. "I need to see," he whispered. Mira stood slowly. If it's him, he wants that. Theo opened the door. Nothing. Just the driveway, slick with mist. A single porch light flickering across the alley. No footsteps, no figure, no sound. But there was something on the ground. A padded envelope, no markings, no return address. Theo bent down, picked it up, and shut the door behind him. No one spoke as he laid it on the table. Elias opened it. Inside, a cassette. No label, no case, just the tape. Theo turned to Mira. "You don't have to." "I do," she said. They found Theo's old deck, dusted it off, and wired it into the interface. Elias pressed play. At first static, then footsteps. Slow, measured. A door creaking open, breathing, female, shaky. Then Rowan's voice, intimate, almost tender. "You can leave whenever you like, but your voice will stay. Your breath will stay. I've kept it. I've kept you." A sound like a mic brushing against fabric. A sob, then silence. The tape clicked as it reached the end of side A. Mira stepped back, hand pressed to her mouth. Elias ejected the cassette with shaking fingers. Nico's name lit up on his phone. He answered immediately. "She's back," Nico said, breathless. "June. She just walked up to the apartment like nothing happened. She won't talk. Elias, she's not right." Elias froze. "Put her on." A beat of shuffling. Then a soft voice came through the receiver. "Hello? June." Except, not quite. Her tone was flat, measured, familiar. "June?" Elias asked. A pause. Then the same words from the cassette, delivered in her voice. "You can leave whenever you like, but your voice will stay." Elias's blood went cold. The line disconnected. He looked at Mira, who already knew. "It's not just samples anymore," she said. "He's doing something else." Theo backed away from the table. "That wasn't June. That couldn't have been June." "No," Elias whispered. It was her voice. But not her. Mira stared at the cassette still in his hand. "Rowan figured it out," she said. "How to turn someone into a loop. Not just capture them, replace them. And now June. June was something else. Not quite a person. Not quite a ghost. A living echo." Theo drove. Mira sat in the back seat, knees tucked to her chest, eyes locked on the passing blur of streetlights. Elias rode passenger, hands tight in his lap, every few seconds glancing at his phone. No new calls, no messages. Nico had gone silent. After June's voice mimicked the recording, the line went dead. Every attempt to call back sent Elias straight to voicemail. It was as if, after that message, Rowan had reached through the phone and unplugged something. "He got to her," Theo said. "He did something. Hypnosis, programming. I don't know what the hell." "It's more than that," Mira said, her voice thin and cold. "He's breaking people down, layering them like samples." Elias turned to her. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. Then, he used to say the only real version of someone was the version that could be replayed, controlled. Anything else was chaos. Theo shook his head. "So what? He's building a soundboard of human beings." "No," Mira said. "He's replacing them." They pulled up in front of Nico's building. Second floor walk up, same as always, but every light in the apartment was on. Bright. Too bright. A flickering strobe of color leaked out through the blinds. Theo grabbed a tire iron from the back seat without explanation. Inside, the stairwell was silent. No footsteps overhead, no distant voices. Just the low pulse of bass vibrating through the ceiling, rhythmic and slow. Elias felt it in his chest like a second heartbeat. They reached the door, unlocked. Theo opened it slowly. The music hit them like a wall. Rowan's track, one of the early ones, distorted now, warped. Playing on loop through every speaker in the apartment. Desktop monitors, a Bluetooth speaker in the kitchen, even Nico's old amp. The lights were pulsing in time with the beat. Nico sat on the couch, motionless, staring ahead. June was beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm, her eyes wide and glassy. She didn't blink, neither did he. Elias stepped forward. Nico. Nothing. He turned to June. June, it's me. Are you okay? She tilted her head slightly, as if listening to a far-off sound. Then, in Mira's voice, I don't want to be remembered like this. Elias flinched. Mira backed away. She's got my voice, Mira whispered. How does she have my voice? Theo stepped between them and Nico, shaking him lightly. Wake up, man. Come on. Nico blinked once, then again. His pupils were blown wide. She sings in me now, he whispered. She's in the room, always. He looked up slowly, directly at Mira. She says you left the best parts behind. Mira backed into Elias. That's Rowan's line. I remember it. He said that to me the night I tried to leave. Theo grabbed the power strip and yanked it from the wall. The music stopped. The lights flickered, then held still. June collapsed to the floor. Nico followed a second later, gasping like someone coming up from underwater. Mira dropped to her knees beside June, checking her pulse. She's alive, but something's wrong. Her eyes, Elias, look at her eyes. He crouched down. They were trembling. Not her irises, but the whites, flickering, like low-quality video. Theo stood frozen, face pale. We're not dealing with a stalker anymore, he said. We're dealing with someone who's turned human consciousness into a medium. Mira looked up at Elias. If he can do this to her and to Nico... She didn't finish the sentence. Elias stared at June's unmoving face and realized the truth. Rowan wasn't trying to immortalize them. He was editing them, each person, each voice, another stem in his growing project. And somewhere, deep in the mix, was Rowan himself. Elias didn't sleep. He sat in Theo's living room, Mira curled on the other couch under a blanket she hadn't moved beneath in hours. June was in the guest room, silent, eyes still flickering behind closed lids. Nico hadn't spoken since collapsing. He lay upstairs, staring at the ceiling like it might speak to him. Elias had plugged headphones into his laptop, but hadn't hit play. The file stared back at him. A project from Rowan's encrypted folder, unearthed hours earlier during the chaos. Its name chilled him more than any other. Final mix, Vox Elias bounce. It wasn't just Mira, or June, or Nico. He was in the arrangement now. Rowan had been recording Elias too. Elias's hands hovered above the keys, then fell to his lap. He stood and crossed the room, stepping softly over scattered cords and cables. Theo sat at the kitchen counter with a mug of black coffee and a stare that had seen too much. He's got a final track, Elias said quietly. Theo looked up. What? He's mixing me in. It's already started. Theo pushed the mug away. What the hell does that mean? Mira stirred slightly at the sound, then sat upright, rubbing her eyes. He's editing reality. That's what this is. They both looked at her. She stood, pale but steady. That's why none of this makes sense. The timing, the way June changed, Nico's voice, the flickering. It's not just obsession. He's using music as a tool, yes, but he's gone past capturing people. He's rewriting them. He's using our sounds to scrub away whatever was there before. Elias pulled the flash drive from his pocket. I think it's the last one he needs. Mira stepped closer. Then we don't let him finish it. Theo frowned. How? Mira looked at the old gear bag, the one she had dropped off what felt like years ago. She walked over to it, unzipped it slowly. Inside was a mess of cables, preamps, 2 microphones, and something else. A mini disc recorder. Elias hadn't seen one in years. She pulled it out. He used to say digital sound was too sterile, that real emotion got lost in the bits. He'd make analog copies of everything, layer them in later to warm the soul. She handed the recorder to Elias. You think this has something on it? She nodded. I think it has everything. Elias opened the compartment. The disc inside was labeled Source 0. He turned it over, read the second line of faded writing. Mira, first voice. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Theo whispered, Jesus. Mira stared at it. I thought I destroyed all the copies. Elias slipped it into the player, hit rewind. The machine whirred to life with a mechanical breath that sounded far too human. They listened. It started with Mira laughing. Genuine, joyful, raw. From years ago, Elias could tell by the youth in her tone. Then a pause, a soft intake of breath. Then Rowan's voice, clearer than it had ever sounded in any of his other recordings. Say it again. Say you love the silence. Mira's voice answered. I love the silence. The recording hissed. Then, now say you'll stay in it. The sound warped, skipped, then resumed. I'll stay in it. Elias stopped the player. That's not consent, Mira whispered. That's programming. Theo stood up abruptly, pacing the room. If that's the first voice, if that's where all of this began, then we end it the same way, Elias said. We take this disc, his Source 0, and we overwrite it. Record our voices on top. Destroy his foundation. Mira nodded slowly. That's what he doesn't expect, that we'd make our own track, one where he's the sample. Theo looked at them both, a strange light in his eyes. Fear, maybe, but also something close to hope. So, he said, what do we call it? Elias didn't hesitate. Silence breaks. They plugged in the mics. They hit record. And in the warm glow of analog hiss, they began the only thing Rowan could never predict. Their own voice, unfiltered, unlooped, and unafraid. The old recorder hissed softly as it finished the bounce. No filters, no effects, just raw voice. Theo's fury, Mira's resolve, Elias's quiet defiance. The three of them layered together, one voice bleeding into the next. Imperfect, human. They named the track Silence Breaks. They uploaded it in the early hours of the morning, sent it to the same black hole inboxes Rowan had always used, the aliases, the encrypted channels, no subject, no message, just the sound. And then they waited. The file sat on the desktop like a lit fuse. Hours passed. The sun rose and colored the garage in soft amber light. The equipment buzzed softly in standby. Outside, the world moved on. Cars, dogs, neighbors. Then the speakers clicked. Not a file, not a message. Live input. A voice came through. Low, degraded, like it was crawling through interference. You think I didn't hear you? I hear everything. I am the room now. The sound glitched, split, reversed, rebuilt. You thought you could overwrite me, but I'm in the silence between your words, in the breath before the line hits red. Elias reached for the interface, but the feed cut off. Just static now, steady, unblinking. The monitors pulsed once, then went black. For a while, no one said anything. Theo unplugged everything. Mira sat back on the stool, eyes half closed, listening to the silence. I think that was the last of him, she said. Elias nodded. He wanted to believe it. But that night when he got home, his laptop turned on by itself. No fanfare, no startup sound, just a single project already open on the screen. No title. Inside an empty session, one track, labeled simply Elias, live. And as he watched, frozen. The waveform began to record, nothing but silence. Until a breath, his own.